Jaguar Land Rover has blamed the economic slowdown in China and doubts about diesel vehicles for its decision to cut 4,500 jobs, most of them in the UK. Japan's Prime Minister has said the whole world wants to avoid a no-deal Brexit. The government is making another U-turn on its flagship benefits reform, Universal Credit. The chairman of Debenhams has been forced out after the retailer reported a drop in sales over Christmas. President Trump has visited the US border with Mexico to press his demands for a multi-billion-dollar wall. Thousands of car workers are facing an uncertain future after two leading manufacturers, Jaguar Land Rover and Ford, announced plans to reduce costs. Jaguar Land Rover is cutting 4,500 jobs, most of them in the UK. But the company also said it would be investing in electric models by producing parts at two factories in the West Midlands. Ford has said it's reviewing its European operations. Thousands of jobs are at risk across the continent and in the UK, although cuts here are not thought to be imminent. This evening, another car maker, Honda, said it would stop production at its plant in Swindon for 6 days in April, in case the supply of parts is disrupted after Britain leaves the EU. Our business correspondent Theo Leggett reports.
Jaguar Land Rover calls its restructuring programmes Charge and Accelerate, but the reality is that the company is losing momentum rapidly and needs to save billions of pounds. It's already cut 1,500 jobs since the beginning of 2018. Now a further 4,500 posts are to go, the vast majority from within the company's UK workforce of 40,000. Most of them will be office jobs, with production line staff spared the bulk of the pain for now. The biggest immediate problem Jaguar Land Rover has faced over the past year has been a dramatic collapse of sales in China, previously its most profitable market. It's also been badly exposed to a steep fall in sales of diesel cars in the UK. And all of this, according to Chief Executive Ralph Spate, has come at a time when the industry is undergoing a technological revolution.
It's a very big moment, and it's, by the way, also a moment with a lot of opportunities. Opportunity we have to grab. In the next 5 years, you're going to see more changes than we have seen over the last 50 years, probably, because we nearly change everything. We change the engines, we change the connectivity, and we go into more assisted systems for the driver and the owner.
Then there's Brexit. JLR has warned that leaving the EU without a deal would have huge implications for its future business, upsetting its supply chains, introducing tariffs on products crossing the Channel, and potentially adding more than £1 billion a year to its costs. The company is already in the process of building up its international manufacturing base. It has a major plant in China. Last year it opened a factory in Slovakia, while its new electric I-Pace is being built in Austria. The editorial director of Autocar, Jim Holder, says that process will continue.
For Jaguar Land Rover to survive into the long term, it needs to be an international player in the global car market. And that means widening its scope beyond just British manufacturing. It has taken steps to do that already. It opened a plant in Europe last year, and it has grown its Chinese operations. Now, it needs to build on that and to really see that project through.
JLR is owned by the Indian conglomerate Tata, but insists it remains a British company and committed to UK manufacturing. It's promised to invest new funds in producing systems for electric cars at its engine plant in Wolverhampton, while a new battery assembly centre will be built at Hams Hall near Birmingham. Darren Hall of the Unite Union welcomed the plan.
We have to look at it from a business perspective, and this is about the long future of the company, not the short term. This is looking for the long term, and the moves where we have to take a little bit of pain. I think we will gain massively for the future, and the UK especially.
Meanwhile, Ford's European division has also announced plans to carry out a major restructuring programme. Thousands of jobs are expected to go across Europe. Ford has 2 engine plants in the UK, at Dagenham in Essex and Bridgend in South Wales. The move is expected to renew concerns about the future of Bridgend in particular, although cuts are not expected imminently. And the Japanese manufacturer Honda has confirmed it will close its Swindon factory for 6 days in April, in case its part supplies are disrupted in the aftermath of Brexit. BMW has previously said it will close its mini plant near Oxford in April for the same reason.
Jaguar Land Rover's chief executive said the company was looking at many options for developing its brand. Our business editor, Simon Jack, considers the carmaker's future.
Jaguar Land Rover is on very rough terrain and is attempting a very difficult manoeuvre. Its historic strengths have become its weaknesses in the face of a changing world. Its success was built on diesel-powered, UK-made, premium brand vehicles that sold in volume around the world, especially in China. All that is changing, with JLR particularly exposed to the double whammy of slumping sales of diesel and the first downturn in China car sales in 2 decades. Today's announcement is a measure of the drastic action the company needs to take. Unions are concerned that while UK jobs are lost, jobs and production are expanding in Slovakia, Brazil, India and indeed China, the source of much of its current troubles. The road ahead looks very challenging as it's spending billions trying to ultimately transform itself into an electric-first brand positioned for the future. If that's where you want to go, you wouldn't want to start where Jaguar is now. Its electric I-Pace vehicle is well regarded, but motorists are not yet buying electric in sufficient numbers to restore Jaguar to its fairly recent glory.
The Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has told Theresa May that the whole world wants to avoid a no-deal Brexit. Speaking after talks in Downing Street, Mr Abe said his country offered total support for her withdrawal agreement and he truly hoped that the UK would not leave the EU without a deal. Here's our diplomatic correspondent James Landale.
Theresa May have scant support for her Brexit withdrawal deal at Westminster, but today at least she found one ally willing to speak up for her efforts. The Prime Minister gave Shinzo Abe a guard of honour, lunch at Twickenham and talks at Downing Street. And in return, as they stood shoulder to shoulder in number 10, the Japanese Prime Minister lavished his host with praise. Mr Abe said he had the deepest respect for Mrs May's hard work and strong will in trying to get her deal through Parliament. Japan, he said, was in total support of that agreement, which would ensure a transition and legal stability for the 1,000 Japanese businesses investing in the UK.
It is the strong will of Japan to further develop this strong partnership with the UK, to invest more into your country and to enjoy further economic growth with the UK. That is why we truly hope that a no-deal Brexit will be avoided. And in fact, that is the whole wish of the whole world.
That was exactly the message that Theresa May wanted to get across to MPs ahead of next week's vote on her deal, a sense of the scale of international concern about a no-deal Brexit. But there are risks. In the past, MPs have not always responded favourably to foreign leaders suggesting what they should do. And on this issue, they have a vote, and Shinzo Abe does not.
The Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn, has indicated he would not immediately call for a vote of no confidence in the government if Theresa May's Brexit deal is rejected by MPs next week. Labour is set to vote against the agreement on Tuesday, but Mr Corbyn again insisted that a general election would be the best way to break the deadlock over the UK's withdrawal from the EU. Mrs May has spoken to 2 union leaders about Brexit for the first time as part of efforts to build support for her deal. Our assistant political editor, Norman Smith, reports.
With Theresa May's Brexit deal seemingly heading towards a resounding defeat, there is now intense debate in Labour ranks over how they respond. Many Labour MPs and party activists are desperate for Mr Corbyn to back a fresh referendum. A recent poll of party members suggested 72% supported the move. Mr Corbyn, however, has always shied away from such a commitment, and today he poured further cold water on the idea, cautioning that politicians could not wish away the views of 17 million voters. He also appeared to signal that he would not be pressing for an immediate no-confidence vote should the Prime Minister's deal be defeated on Tuesday. That, he suggested, may have to wait.
Labour will table a motion of no confidence in the government at the moment we judge it to have the best chance of success. Clearly, Labour does not have enough MPs at the moment in Parliament to win a confidence vote on its own.
At the same time, there are clear signs of attempts at bridge building by the government after Number 10 signalled they'd accept an amendment tabled by Labour MPs guaranteeing workers' rights. The Prime Minister also held what were described as constructive talks today with key union leaders, including Unite's Len McCluskey, and, it was confirmed, held further talks with some Labour MPs. One of them, John Mann, was asked if Mrs May's approach made it more more likely Labour backbenchers could support the deal.
Of course it does, but it doesn't mean that people are going to be rushing on Tuesday to do so. And indeed, this is the start of the process. I mean, I could reasonably say perhaps it should have been done a long time ago, but we are where we are. The Labour MPs who, of course, won't be very happy are those who want to overturn the referendum, overturn the manifesto they stood on, and have a second referendum or revoke Article 15, keep us in the EU.
The Labour front bench for now remains publicly hostile to any compromise with Mrs May, and while there's little chance of any significant movement by next Tuesday, the hope in government is that as the clock ticks down to no deal, more Labour MPs can be encouraged to back the Prime Minister, enough, perhaps, to give Mrs May a chance of eventual success.
The Work and Pension Secretary, Amber Rudd, is to announce another U-turn on the government's flagship benefits reform, Universal Credit. She'll use a speech in the morning to say she's scrapping plans to extend retrospectively the two-child benefit cap. The move will help around 15,000 families a year who would have lost out. Here's our political correspondent Nick Eardley.
Amber Rudd had pledged to listen to concerns about universal credit, and later today she will set out how she intends to address them. She will announce plans to explore more frequent payments for new claimants after complaints some people were being forced into poverty by delays in getting money. Ms Rudd will also say she is scrapping a plan to extend the controversial two-child benefit cap. The policy is designed to limit support to a family's first two children. For subsequent children, parents are not entitled to claim the child element of the benefit except in special cases. The cap will remain for third children born after the policy changed in 2017, but a plan to extend it next month to cover new claimants whose third child was born before the change was introduced is being dropped, with Ms Rudd saying it would not be right. The U-turn is expected to benefit around 15,000 families per year. Ms Rudd's speech will be seen as an attempt to turn around the beleaguered universal credit rollout, confirming she will not seek MPs' backing to move 3 million people onto the benefit next month, instead piloting around 10,000. But Labour and the SNP, who have been vocal critics of the implementation, say the changes do not go far enough and the two-child benefit cap should be abandoned in its entirety.
The chairman of Debenhams, Sir Ian Cheshire, has stepped down after the struggling retailer reported a sharp drop in sales over the Christmas period. Two major shareholders voted against his re-election to the board at the company's annual general meeting. Debenhams' chief executive, Sergio Boucher, has also been removed from the board but will continue in his role. More details from our business correspondent, Jonty Bloom.
Debenhams saw sales fall over the Christmas period, a sure sign of its continuing serious problems. It's losing money hand over fist and is planning to close up to 50 of its worst-performing stores. But now it's obvious that the company's largest shareholders have lost confidence in its most senior management. Debenhams' largest shareholder is Mike Ashley, the owner of Sports Direct and of the House of Fraser. Last month, he offered to lend Debenhams £40 million, an offer that was quickly and firmly rejected by the company, which was worried that it would give Mr Ashley too much influence over Debenhams' future. He said he wants to merge it with House of Fraser. Now Mr Ashley appears to have got his revenge and flexed his muscles by forcing out the two top executives on the board who opposed him last month.
John Lewis has said it might not pay bonuses to its staff for the first time since 1953, despite higher sales over Christmas. The warning came as a number of retailers reported disappointing trading figures, including Marks & Spencer and Halfords. The British Retail Consortium said it had been the worst December since the financial crisis in 2008. Our economics correspondent Darshini David reports.
Retailers typically make 40% of their money over the crucial festive trading period. But for many, this Christmas failed to deliver. A decade of stagnant real wages and uncertainty over what lies ahead made shoppers more cautious. Marks & Spencer, which is in the midst of a turnaround plan, saw sales fall 2.2%, with clothing and footwear hardest hit. John Lewis may have managed to increase sales, but it too felt the impact of the downturn. Its chairman, Charlie Mayfield, warned that the annual bonus paid to its 84,000 staff may be at risk for the first time in 66 years.
We can afford to pay one because we've taken steps over the last 3 years to build up our cash position, and actually we're in a relatively good position on that. But what we have to also think about, is it prudent? And of course, in some ways, this year is no different to any other year, except there's obviously quite a big difference in the sense there's a lot of uncertainty. We'll see in March. We won't make the decision till then.
Analysts point out that spending was not as disastrous as some had feared. And there were some bright spots. Tesco reported an increase of 1.2% in the latest quarter and posted its best Christmas performance in almost a decade. But overall, the trend in high street spending is subdued. As they grapple with changing shopping habits and mounting costs, retailers are starting 2019 feeling less than prosperous.
President Trump has visited a Texan border town in an attempt to bolster his case for a wall to be erected between the United States and Mexico. A row about how the barrier will be paid for has led to a partial government shutdown, which has lasted 3 weeks. Our correspondent Gary O'Donoghue reports from Washington.
The president's visit was a determined attempt to focus the argument on the human cost of cross-border illegal immigration. He looked on as border agents described the activities of people traffickers and drug smugglers, parading seized narcotics and weapons, including several gold-plated, diamond-encrusted handguns. The families of agents killed by gangs also spoke about their lost loved ones. When the president addressed the border agents, his message was a simple one.
This is common sense. They need a barrier, they need a wall. If you don't have it, it's going to be nothing but hard work and grueling problems. And by the way, and death, a lot of death.
But there was no declaration of the state of emergency the president has been threatening to impose for several days now. Instead, before arriving in Texas, Donald Trump chose to lie about the wall, claiming he had never said Mexico would pay for it directly. In fact, Mr. Trump repeatedly said just that, with one campaign memo specifically referring to a one-off payment of $5 to $10 billion. Meanwhile, the partial government shutdown continues, with 800,000 federal employees facing an empty pay packet later today.
President Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, has said he will testify in public before members of Congress next month. Cohen was sentenced to 3 years in prison last month for organising payments to 2 women who claimed to have slept with Mr. Trump and lying to Congress about contacts between the Trump campaign and Russia. Police in Las Vegas have issued a warrant demanding a DNA sample from the Portuguese football star Cristiano Ronaldo as part of their investigation into rape allegations made against him. Ronaldo denies assaulting Catherine Mayorga at a hotel in the city in 2009. A lawyer for the Juventus forward described it as a standard request. Dan Johnson reports from Los Angeles.
Catherine Mayorga met Cristiano Ronaldo in a Las Vegas nightclub 10 years ago. She claims he sexually assaulted her later in a hotel room. Police reopened the investigation last year and have asked for a DNA sample through authorities in Italy, where Ronaldo now plays. His lawyer, Peter Christiansen, said Ronaldo had always maintained that what happened was consensual and that therefore it would not be surprising if there was DNA evidence. Miss Mayorga claims the Portugal and former Manchester United striker paid her nearly £300,000 to keep quiet.
The family of a boy who was knocked off his moped and stabbed to death in East London have said he had absolutely no affiliation with gangs. Police believe Jaden Moodie was killed in a targeted attack. His family said if there were people capable of killing a 14-year-old child, then no one was safe. Ashley John Baptiste reports.
Jaden Moodie's cousin, Leon Green, said the teenager killed on Tuesday night had been a loving, caring and bright young lad who had his whole life ahead of him. Mr. Green, who was standing alongside Jaden's mother, Jada Bailey, said the 14-year-old had had a keen interest in bikes and sport and had been due to start at a boxing academy later this month. Mr. Green also rejected some suggestions in the media that Jaden had been involved with gangs.
I would like to stress that Jaden had recently moved from Nottingham to London and had absolutely no affiliation with gangs. Focus needs to be on the fact that he has been brutally murdered in cold blood and deserves a fair chance at justice.
Yesterday, police found the Mercedes B-Class car thought to have been used in the attack, which happened when Jaden was knocked off a moped and then stabbed. Currently, no arrests have been made. The Metropolitan Police said additional officers were in the area and that there had been an increase in the number of armed response vehicles sent to Leighton.
The authorities in South Africa say they've intercepted rhino horn worth more than £1 million, which was being smuggled out of the country. The haul, one of the biggest of recent years, was discovered by a sniffer dog at Johannesburg's International Airport. From Johannesburg, our correspondent Andrew Harding reports.
This was a rare and significant find. 36 rhino horns, or pieces of horn, hidden in boxes packed with doormats and decorations. Customs officials at Johannesburg's OR Tambo Airport say Lizzie, a detector dog, sniffed out the contraband, which was wrapped in plastic and awaiting shipment to Dubai. Rhino poachers usually smuggle the horns out one at a time or carved into smaller blocks or pellets or even powder for use in traditional medicine in Vietnam and China. This 116-kilogram haul is one of the biggest in recent years. And of course, each horn has been hacked off the body of an individual rhino. Every year, roughly 1,000 of the endangered animals are killed by well-armed poaching gangs here in South Africa.
The RAF's new F-35 stealth fighter jets are ready to be deployed on operations for the first time. Speaking at their new base at RAF Marham in Norfolk, the Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson said the plane's introduction showed the UK's commitment to a role on the world stage. Here's our defence correspondent Jonathan Beale.
The first 9 of the RAF's F-35s landed in the UK last year. It's the world's most advanced jet, designed to be hard to detect and to strike deep inside enemy territory. Each jet costs around £100 million, and Britain says it'll eventually buy 138. Speaking in a gleaming cavernous hangar to maintain the new aircraft, Gavin Williamson said they were now ready for combat. It's understood that F-35s will be deployed to RAF Akrotiri in Cyprus this spring, though it's not yet clear whether they'll join RAF Typhoons in conducting strikes against the group known as Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. Over the past few years, the RAF has spent nearly £500 million on upgrading the Typhoon so that it can carry more weapons and take on the role of the RAF's sole stalwart, the Tornado jet. It's been in service for nearly 40 years. Mr. Williamson said it would now be the job of the F-35 and the Typhoon to dominate the skies and, in his words, send a message to Britain's adversaries of don't mess with us.
The government says all major UK airports now have, or will have in the near future, military-grade equipment to deal with drones. Ministers are also working on installing the technology at other key locations such as prisons, power stations and military sites. The move follows disruption caused by drone sightings just before Christmas at Gatwick and at Heathrow earlier this week. Here's our transport correspondent Tom Burridge.
Heathrow was already trialling sophisticated anti-drone equipment before Christmas, when multiple drone sightings at Gatwick Airport caused chaos. But the suspension of departures at Heathrow on Tuesday night shows that even if anti-drone systems are in place, it is still possible for a determined criminal to get a drone within an airport's perimeter. This afternoon, airport bosses met ministers to discuss what equipment can be used, such as devices which can jam the signal drones need to operate or capture them mid-flight. But Gavin Wishart, who chairs a national drone association called ARPAS, said drones are often small and fast, so tracking and combating them is not straightforward.
If you interrupt my beam, where's the drone going to go? If I try and take it out, what's going to happen to the drone when it comes down? It's all possible, but it's keeping pace with that. And I think probably the Gatwick and the Heathrow instance have sort of highlighted the potential vulnerability of these places. People are going to have to invest in that sort of technology.
Even though shooting down a drone with bullets is potentially very risky, I understand armed police were poised at Gatwick to start shooting during the incident before Christmas. I'm also told that some of the drone sightings at Gatwick were in critical parts of the airport, near or in landing and takeoff zones, making the threat to aircraft all the more real. The police are said to have photos of the drone or drones used at Gatwick.
The American pop star Lady Gaga has apologised for working with R. Kelly. The 52-year-old R&B singer has been accused of sexually abusing multiple women and underage girls over several decades. He denies all the allegations. Charlotte Gallagher has this report.
I believe I can fly. I believe I
can touch the sky.
R. Kelly has sold 75 million records, won 3 Grammys and worked with some of the biggest names in music, such as Jay-Z and Michael Jackson. But there has long been concern about his behaviour towards young girls, including his alleged marriage to the singer Aaliyah when she was only 15. A new documentary, Surviving R. Kelly, features interviews with women who say they were assaulted by the star. It also claims that teenage girls and women were kept trapped in the singer's home in a so-called sex cult. Prosecutors in the US cities of Atlanta and Chicago are now urging potential victims to come forward. R. Kelly has denied the claims and reportedly threatened to sue anyone involved in the documentary. Lady Gaga, who was sexually assaulted when she was a teenager, had been under pressure to speak out because the pair duetted on this song in 2013. She's now issued a statement saying that she stands behind these women 1,000% and that the allegations are horrifying and indefensible. She added she was in a dark time in her life when she worked with R. Kelly and promised the song would now be removed from all music streaming services. Lady Gaga isn't the first star to criticise R. Kelly. The singer John Legend has been vocal in his condemnation, saying he believes the alleged victims.
In the city, the 100 share index ended the day 36 points higher at 6,943. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones was up 123 points at 24,002. On the currency markets, the pound was up 0.2 cents against the dollar at $1.27.7. Against the euro, sterling was up 0.4 cents at €1.11, making a euro worth 90 pence. Police in Spain have arrested 15 people as part of an investigation into tennis match fixing by an Armenian criminal gang. The authorities said 83 people were under investigation, including 28 professional players. In 2016, a joint BBC and BuzzFeed News investigation uncovered suspected illegal betting on tennis matches. Here's our sports correspondent, David Ornstein.
This investigation began last year amid concerns about irregular activities around matches at lower-level futures and challenger tournaments. Spanish police said a criminal group of Armenian individuals bribed professional tennis players to guarantee predetermined results and used the identities of thousands of citizens to bet on the fixed matches, with members of the Armenian group then attending those matches to ensure the players complied. Of the 28 players implicated, one is said to have competed at last year's US Open, but none of the suspects has been named. The EU police agency Europol revealed that 11 houses were searched in Spain and €167,000 in cash was seized, along with a shotgun, more than 50 electronic devices, credit cards, 5 luxury vehicles and documentation relating to the case. 42 bank accounts have been frozen. The authorities explained the scam had been operating since at least February 2017, with upwards of 97 futures and challenger matches fixed and profits possibly running into millions of euros.
Now for a look at the morning papers. The Guardian reports that the Confederation of British Industry will warn later that a no-deal Brexit would have profound economic consequences. The business body, which wants MPs to support the Prime Minister's Brexit deal, claims GDP would shrink by up to 8% and thousands of jobs would be put at risk. The Independent leads on Mrs May begging unions to help save her EU deal. An investigation by the Daily Telegraph suggests that hospitals routinely allow male patients to share female wards if they self-identify as women. The paper claims that NHS trusts in England don't require patients to have begun transition to be treated as their preferred sex. Eating wholemeal bread can cut the risk of suffering from heart disease and cancer by a third, according to The Times. The Guardian says the findings are incompatible with the low-carb diets that have become fashionable. And the Daily Mail questions whether the Duchess of Sussex dressed appropriately for a visit to a charity which provides clothes to women hoping to get back into work. Was her £5,600 outfit the right choice, it asks. The headlines again. Britain's largest car maker, Jaguar Land Rover, has insisted it remains committed to its UK business after announcing 4,500 job losses here. The Japanese Prime Minister has told Theresa May that avoiding a no-deal Brexit is the wish of the whole world. Another U-turn on the government's flagship benefits reform, Universal Credit, is to be announced by the Work and Pension Secretary. The chairman of Debenhams, Sir Ian Cheshire, has stepped down after the struggling retailer reported a sharp drop in Christmas sales. President Trump has visited a Texan border town as part of his push to obtain funding for a wall between the US and Mexico. BBC News.